So I'm actually getting more and more stuff here. So this is from westernunion.com, and the title of it was Tipping Around the World, a Global Gratuity Guide. And in here, it talks about if you're from the US, you're probably familiar with the unspoken rule of tipping. You better tip, the better the tip, the better service you'll receive next time if you come back. They recommend 15 to 20% on a restaurant bill. The same for taxis, and similar to U.S. patrons in Canada and Colombia, also tip 15 to 20%. In Argentina, Mexico, Nicaragua, and Peru, servers are used to a little bit less, with 10 to 15% gratuity being the norm. Most restaurants in Brazil, Chile, and Costa Rica include a 10% sit-down charge to the bill, referred to as cubierto in Chile. In these cases, no one expects a tip, but feel free to put down an extra 5 to 10 in cash. The servers might not receive their share of this cubierto. Okay. Tip: if you leave a tip in Brazil, make sure to do it discreetly, because Brazilians are very subtle when it comes to business transactions. Tipping in Europe. In a nutshell, leaving tips of larger than 15 to 20% is unnecessary and sometimes considered ignorant. And yes, I did run into that when I first left a tip in that restaurant, and I looked at them. I said, "This is for you for doing a good job. I appreciate it." And at the time, the one server was actually going to school, and I explained to the owner. I said, "I want to see this guy succeed. I hope he puts this toward his education." And the owner really appreciated it after that, because yes, it can be considered ignorant, but then he realized that I was actually looking after the people, and that's why they look after me. I come in there and boom, I'm taken care of. In an effort to do away with tipping politics, the Netherlands requires the establishments to include tips in their published prices. However, it is common for people to still leave a small tip of 5 to 10% called fooi. So this idiot put down, nobody else ever tips. There are no other systems. Well, apparently every place has got a system. Other EU countries which generally add a service charge to the bill include Czech Republic, France, Hungary, Spain, Sweden. I can also say Romania and a couple other places. In these countries, tipping is not customary, but considered a generous act in exchange for exceptional service. Why? Because it's already included. That's why it's not mandatory, because it's mandatory because they force it in your bill. You can't get out of that. Trust me. You can go in and say, "I don't want to pay that tip because they didn't do a good job." They're going to laugh at you. I saw a guy get kicked out of the restaurant in Romania for that. Actually, he was Irish. Got kicked out of the restaurant because he was complaining about the service and said that he wasn't going to pay the tip, and then he wound up walking out without paying the bill at all. And he had the audacity to come back the next day, and they kicked him out. I'm surprised they didn't call the police on him. Okay, so they do not have strong tipping cultures in Ireland, Germany, Portugal, and the United Kingdom. So leaving a gratuity is up to you. The rule of thumb is 5 to 10% unless a charge is included in the bill or the service is really bad. Drivers and bartenders in these countries usually don't expect gratuity, but rounding up the bill is always appreciated. In Australia, Italy, and Russia, tipping isn't regularly practiced, but it's also common for people to generously round up the bill. Okay. Fun fact: in Germany, the word for tip is Trinkgeld, which translates to drinking money. In France, it's I'm not even going to try to pronounce that, which similarly means to have a drink. Have a drink on me, basically. Tipping in the Middle East and parts of Africa. Okay, so here you're talking about in Qatar, Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates. They're used to receiving 15 to 20%. Even cities like Dubai, which requires a 10% service charge. Oh, nobody else in the world requires tipping. America doesn't require it. It's not mandatory. Dubai, it's mandatory. Some of these places, it's mandatory. This person that started me off on this whole thing is just absolutely ignorant, has done no research, never been out of the country. There's no way they could have ever been out of the country. African countries like Jordan, Morocco, South Africa, the waitstaff will expect at least 10 to 15%. Nicer restaurants and popular tourism countries like Egypt and Israel will also add that charge to the bill. So keep an eye out to prevent double tipping. I was double tipping in Romania and not knowing it at first. Okay? So this moron, which is what she is, he is, whatever that person is an absolute moron. Well, actually, you know what? There's a medical terminology. I'll cover that here in just a minute. Fun fact, Iranian culture, gift means a lot more than monetary compensation. Travelers are encouraged to express their appreciation at hotels with a small gift from their country. Well, that I didn't know. So if I ever go to Iran, remind me to take a gift from wherever I'm at the time. All right, so as you can see, there is more and more and more. China's starting to accept tips, so who knows what the future is. Japan and Nepal strictly believe good service is simply a part of life, so tipping should only be a good reward. I'm going to tell you right now, if you tip in Japan, it is an insult. I had a waitress when I was 19 years old. I went to Japan, and I went to a restaurant out in town, and I left a tip, and the waitress almost broke down in tears. And I asked her what was wrong. She says, I don't know what I'm doing wrong. I'm like, what do you mean? She says, and she spoke English. She goes, well, I must be doing something wrong because you tipped me and so did the other table. I said, no, I tipped you because you did a good job. I said, if I had more money, I would have given you more because you did an outstanding job. If you didn't do a good job, I wouldn't have left you anything. She goes, really? I said, yeah. She goes, well, here in Japan, when you tip, it's an insult. It means that you're trying to motivate me to do a better job. I'm like, if you're doing a bad job and I'm paying you, that's motivation to not do it. Okay, so basically it's backwards. So I don't know why, unless it's changed in the past 30 years, because it used to be an insult. Due to an influx of tourism, countries like Cambodia, Indonesia, Thailand, Vietnam, and parts of Turkey are becoming more open to receiving tips. However, tipping is still not considered customary. It is out here in Turkey. I don't know how old this is, but as you saw, there's a tip jar out there, and they do expect it. It's required out here. It's not really required, but like in America, they get taxed on a certain percentage of each bill of each table that they wait, and that tax, the Turkish government is pretty much expecting you to tip. So it's not fox paws if you don't leave one. Actually, it really is out here. In Australia and New Zealand, servers and drivers also don't expect tips. I've never been to either one of these places if you round up, but they appreciate it if you round up the bill. So I did find some things in here that I don't necessarily agree with. So I don't know, like Australia and New Zealand, I've never been there. I don't know for sure. That could be wrong, but basically, unless you're in like Japan, if you leave a tip, especially if you leave a tip and you tell them how much you appreciate what they did, that means a lot to them. When you take time out to talk to them and tell them how you feel about, the work that they did, how hardworking they are, find out a little bit to know about them. You come back to that restaurant, you're going to be treated like a god. And keep in mind, tipping in a lot of places is required. It's already on the bill. And you got to watch that to make sure that you're not double tipping. All right, so Tipping customs can change as tourism shapes cultural norms and wage laws change. If you find yourself unsure whether to tip or not, ask your server if tipping is customary. If it doesn't feel appropriate to ask, simply round the bill up. There's nothing wrong with bringing a little of your culture to the table by leaving something behind. It can be like in Japan, unless it's changed. Like I said, that poor girl was in tears. And to be honest with you, at 19 years old, I was single. She was kind of cute. I was very interested in her. And when she started crying, I almost wanted to cry. I thought I did something wrong. So, again, this person, that Adina person or whatever its name is, really has no clue, has never done any research, never been out of the country, never done one Google search. And this was like just a quick Google search on, I forget what I asked. Now, let's do this. Let's go medical terms for moron and idiot. All right, if I learn how to spell. So, these are actually medical terms: moron, idiot, and imbecile. People, I think, believe that moron is the dumbest of them all, when in fact, idiot really is. So, let's look at this. We'll go down here. Where's it at? Idiots are those that are so defective that the mental development never exceeds that of a normal child of about 2 years old. Imbeciles, and that word should be of. Idiots. Imbeciles, those whose development is higher than that of an idiot, but whose intelligence does not exceed that of a normal child of about 7 years of age. Morons, those whose mental development is above that of an imbecile, but does not exceed that of a normal child of about 12 years old. I swear to God, that person that I'm dealing with in that one thread is a complete and utter idiot. Really. Going to sit there and call me names because he, she, or it feels like I was absolutely wrong and didn't know a thing, and they know everything. And I've just blasted everything they've said out of the water over and over and over again. And I guarantee you, they're like, oh, I have to explain this to you many times because you're a Marine. Many times over in that thread, I told that idiot she was already tipped. It was on their credit card. It was on their credit card. She was tipped before they even picked up the order. Okay, so that woman, she gets called over. Hey, I got a delivery for you. She's already got her tip before that person even called her over there. She gets the food, drives over to these people's house, gets pissed off because she realizes she's not going to get any money at the door, and she throws the food onto the lawn and drives off. And behavior like that person shouldn't have gotten a tip at all. Not at all. But she had already got her tip. The food had already been paid for, the tip had already been placed, and she drove off after ruining their food, and she still got her tip, and that food was still paid for. Now, most likely, there's no follow-on story on that. Most likely, if they called up the restaurant and said, look, this is what your driver just did, that driver probably got fired. You don't act like that. Even if you're not going to get paid, you don't act like that. If you bring food to the door and they're expected to pay at the door and they don't, well, you just take that back to the restaurant and the restaurant will go after them because that's theft. You don't act the fool and you don't get paid anything when you do. If you pay the person after acting the fool, you're the fool. Believe me, I usually tip very well. But if you act the fool, I don't tip. I had one lady that was really, really, really horrible at a restaurant that I used to go to all the time. I got great service at it. This night, I got absolutely no service. So I didn't leave a tip. She got pissed. And while I was paying my bill, she comes up to yell at me. And the manager stops her and says, look, this guy always leaves great tips. I said, not tonight. I said, I didn't get any service. I had to go beg other waiters and waitresses to bring me food. I left them tips, but I did not leave her a tip. She got mad when I said that. And he says, yeah, we've got this problem with her. The next night that I came out there, which was about a week later, she had been fired. Not just a one-off. This is how she was with every one of her customers. Every last one of them complained about her. She didn't deserve a tip. Not at all. Not from any of us. And she got nothing but complaint after complaint after complaint. Am I going to pay somebody for doing a bad job? No, I'm not. And then you've got one case where I was at a Denny's in Kentucky, and this guy had who I considered to be the best waitress there, and she was doing her best to accommodate him, but he kept saying all kinds of contradictory things, and then he gets mad at her and starts yelling at her and wants to call the manager over and starts filing a formal complaint against her. And I stood up and walked over to the table, put my fist down on the table kind of hard. I said, you know what? You're lucky that I'm not the owner of this place, because I'd throw you out. And I told the owner what was going on in reality, and I actually had videotaped some of it on my phone, and I showed him. And the owner looked at him and says, yeah, would you please leave, sir? So, you know, if you're getting good service, don't be a moron. But if you're a server and you're acting a moron, don't expect a tip. It's a give and take situation. I expect to be treated the right way when I go into a place. And at the same time, I expect to treat them properly. If they're busy, I'm not going to constantly be bugging them. I will try my best to wait for a good break. I'm not going to act like a moron. But please, if you're a waiter or a waitress, don't act like a moron in front of the customers. Even if you don't get a good tip, do your best and then tell the manager how you feel, what happened, and let them deal with it. It's better to not drive customers away from your employer's business, because that makes you look bad not only in the customer's eyes but in your manager's eyes. And this is something that person in that thread absolutely has no grasp or concept of understanding. And I'm going to go ahead and close this off, and hopefully I beat this dead horse to death and I don't have to worry about it again.